We're live, Mr. Wade. I yield,
Good
sir.
night. Good night. Good night once again to our viewers and listeners, both at home and abroad. Again, welcome to our 323 edition of our Belizean Affairs show on a blessed Wednesday, 23rd July 2025. There's a lot going on in our country, and there's a lot going on around the world. But we here on this program, we try to enlighten our people, um, bring to the people, the happenings, what's really going on, how we see it. Like I always say, every day it's a new episode in the Jewel, Belize. Every day,
Right
something
on.
new. So some of the media houses dissects, reality and truth. No, we speak truth. We don't dissect and we call a spade a spade. So, on that note, it's a pleasure sitting here with our senior panelist, Mr. Leonard Brackett,
The pleasure is mine too, Mr. Wade.
and we will be joined by Mr. Gregory Brackett, another senior panelist, and by attorney at law, Ms. Sharon Pitts. Again, we always brace her presence when we can because she is not always available to us, but she braces us when she can, and we appreciate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to bring to your attention while we're live and to the attention of the public that last Monday program, we've been getting some good reviews on it and good articulation, good verbal questions and answers, and people are taking off. People are really at
Yes,
this point now they're becoming real concerned because we have until the end of this month for people to become sensitized to and or address or look after this issue because they have already read it in the house once. So I just want to
yes,
bring that and tell you that that one is
yes.
for the archive. Thank you very much, sir.
And like I say, it's a pleasure having her because she brings to the table um, legal matters, and she bring as an attorney. She knows exactly what's going on in terms of lately we see a lot going on. Different people start talking about the 13th Amendment. Different people lately. We've been beating this for some time, and she brings to the table her perspective and how she understands what's going on with the 13th Amendment and if it's good or bad for Belize. And we always welcome you know, her input. Then put it that way, because it's a legal input, and especially in the country of Belize, if here the attorney and they talk up well, and they say I don't know what in the tower, and things. So, but it's good to have attorney Sharon Pitts to explain to us, you know, um, in detail. She will be joining us in a little bit. And always, we start our program with a prayer followed by a reading. And I'll ask Mr. Leonard Brackett to lead us in a prayer, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate with you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just bow my head for a minute and say a short prayer, sir.
Thank you.
Loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that is in them, we pray that thou mayst accept our humble expression of gratitude for having given us the privilege of life and the opportunity to still be alive among our family members, friends, and loved ones. Please bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership. Please bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well. Please bless our family members, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. And loving Father, we pray that thou must bless the rest of humanity, those who have need of food and clothes and shelter, and those who are in war zones, as well as tornadoes, floodings, earthquakes, and many other disasters and pestilence. Please continue to be merciful unto us, and may this program that we present tonight be of some positive public benefit for our people and country of Belize. We ask His mercies in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that one prayer, Leonard.
You're welcome, Mr.
The
Chairman.
country and the nation, the world needs prayer. And, our heartfelt, sympathy goes out to all those who have been affected by the flooding in the U.S., tornadoes, in the U.S., and lots of things going on around the world. So our prayers goes out to all those who are affected. So
Amen.
thank you for that prayer. One of our viewers sent me a reading, but they wanted me to read a part, but I had already read a part of that same reading she sent me, but I shift a little bit um, from the numbers that she wanted to read me to read from, because I noticed that for some reason I have read that passage already. So he asked me to read from Mark. I'll do chapter 13, 20, 21 to 31. And it reads, "And then, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'Look, there he is,' do not believe it. For false and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect.
Mhm.
But be on guard. I have told you all things beforehand. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And when they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory, and then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heaven. From the fig trees, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender, it puts out its leaf. But you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near,
Amen.
at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father.
Amen.
Be on guard, keep awake, and pray, for for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and command the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. That's my reading, Leonard. Um, Mark.
Yes.
Uh, like I say, Leonard, we have a lot going on in our jewel. I will ask you to, if you want to say a little public announcement before
Yes, sir.
I.
Uh, I'm distressed on three things currently. One, the fact that the government are intending to act as scarf laws and are trying to push onerous constitutional changes under the guise that because they're empowered to make laws, they're not telling the people that the laws that they're trying to make are not constitutional. They're pretending that because of the numbers that they have in the House, they're empowered to make just about any law, including these bastardized laws, which is to derogate and take away the fundamental rights of people at their whim, contrary to constitutional prescripts or legal precedents. And I'm also concerned about the second part, which is they're actually not only trying to take away this small portion, they're actually trying to revise the whole constitution in massive ways, such as to create a new, complete, different paradigm, constitution, and governance system that we, the Belizeans, are not used to. That is actually alien to our previous understanding and knowledge and experience in terms of what we think our country is supposed to be about or should or is about. And they're trying to make these wholesale changes while bamboozling the people. And they know better because we have shown on this particular program many times where they appeared to know what they were talking about and they turn around now and are just going the opposite direction now that they have the powers. When they didn't have the powers, they were willing to accede and concede to the fact that what they were talking about then was constitutionally correct and should be the way to go. Now that they have the powers in hand, they're turning, 180 degrees direction and advocating the very same opposite of what initially they were advocating. Now they're trying to bastardize the Constitution because we dared to give them the powers of governance. And then thirdly, and I'm finishing with this, I'm totally baffled as to why is it that our people are getting into so many accidents on the road. I mean, it's becoming outrageous. Too many people are dying gratuitously at that because I don't think that all these accidents that are happening should be happening. I know for a certain part of it is the condition of the road. Even the new road that they just surfaced, they did not surface it correctly. That is that the edges of the road don't have no shoulders. And there's like inches away from the existing shoulder of the road to the smooth part of the road surface. Such that when some vehicle go off the road, like let's say they want to slow down or maybe for whatever reason they end up with one set of wheels off the road, they have to be fighting the steering wheel to try and get the vehicle back on the road because they have to climb up back that extra 2 or 3 inches of asphalt to get back on the smooth part of the road. When the government build roads, they need to build shoulders to the road. And like I'm saying, Some of these drivers that drive reckless, they end up in accidents. They fly past other vehicles, and when they get into the accident, the other vehicles that they fly past them while they're in the accident. Okay, either a tire blowout, or some other mechanical thing happened to their vehicle, or maybe they were drunk, or maybe they were trying to overtake some other vehicle, and the other vehicle didn't give them a pass, and they got jammed between the oncoming traffic, so they collide face on. I mean, so many different variations of accidents, but it's just becoming intolerable. It's too many accidents. Too many people are losing their lives, and those who don't lose their lives are losing their limbs. You know, they're making it hard on those who survive.
Thank,
So I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, thank you, thank you, Leonard. You
You're
know,
welcome, sir.
our discussion tonight will mainly based on the 13th Amendment and the bastardization of our Constitution, and the things that the the government are doing because of the super majority and super mandate that the people recently gave them. So they're power drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will go back a little. I will not touch the um the ICJ in length, but if most of us, Leonard, should remember how the country of Honduras came after all the shenanigans with the claim from Guatemala. Then after the country of Honduras makes her claim too to the stabilities, right? And then it dawned on me. I said, damn, I said, look at Belize. We have a constitution that have its laws like many other countries have its laws to govern the nation and its people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, like, for instance, the claim from you have a born Honduranian in the highest level of our governance. Elected too. Elected. When our constitution says
It shouldn't,
otherwise,
it shouldn't happen.
that should have never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Same as Guatemala. You have born Guatemalans, past and present, in our highest level of our governance in this country, dictating, running things, doing what they want. Born when our constitution says different, right? So I just bringing this up because here you have a claim in the ICJ from Honduras, and here you have a claim from Guatemala, and again, the amount of money that is going to cost the taxpayers to proceed with that claim, and it's not finished there. So let's give that some highlight. Do they still do they respect what's going on? No, they still have incursions on a regular basis. And what does the government of Belize does? Nothing.
They had a ship just what a few days ago.
Few days ago,
And
right? And it's not
that's becoming a regular occurrence now. Over and over.
habitual practice. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. And it's so sad how our taxpayers just pay these people that shouldn't be in our governance system at all. Shouldn't, right? We see and we know that our constitution says different, Leonard, that we should not allow that to happen, right? We see the incursion, constant incursion, right? So, I mean, who is protecting us? Who is protecting us? That's all I ask. And then we have the 13th Amendment. Big issue. See some attorneys from different sectors coming on board, other sector of society coming on board, and they are denouncing. But these people are hell bent to, 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 to do what they want to do to the nation and the people. So my thing is that, in any event, we should look out for some turbulence in if they pass that, because a lot of people are not on board with it. As to what extent they will go to show the government that they are not happy and they should not do it, I cannot say. It's in the making, though. It's in the making. If they pass it and they get away with it, they should consider themselves lucky. But maybe, just maybe, they will not get away with it and they will not pass it. That's something I hope and pray for. I'm totally against what's in it. Could have been done differently. But what's in it, I am totally against it. So we see that taking place. We have heard lately by the same PUP government about a new identity, right? We've heard it, we've seen it come from their own mouth. We see what they did with the crown of the dollar, right? Our Belizean money, the Belizean currency. And remember, a certain sector of the governance are talking about a new identity. Now they have in process, and it will happen, a new ID, national ID. Whatever is their plan, but that sounds very nasty to me. That sounds like another corrupted idea. That sounds like pure corruption, right? It doesn't sound healthy. So what happened to our ID that we have right now? What happened to that? It's not good. Why is it that they want to come up with a national new ID? So maybe then they say, well, just an ID. They don't have to go through immigration process and all that, right? So let's just try showing a national ID.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
On that particular point about the national ID, that's another new scam that they are coming with.
Exactly.
To try and make sure that the Belizean who is abroad, for example, will not be able to get the so-called new national ID unless they go through some process that they are then granting them that ID to so-called classify them as real Belizean or as valid individuals who are authorized to have that ID. In other words, you're not a Belizean by birth anymore. You're a Belizean by virtue of whether or not you have an ID that they facilitate you with, which they are facilitating all the other people that are coming in, flooding in the country, that they are legitimizing. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Like I say, sounds like corruption, and you don't know the fine print. It's just like you don't know the fine print about the 13th Amendment. They are not reading their fine print, what's in it. They're not reading the clause that's in it. You will have to go and find out yourself. Okay.
Or they might find out when they're already involved with it and being at Happyville.
Exactly. So again, we see the new identity coming to tuition, right? Slowly, right? The new identity, the new ID, the shivering of the queens, the of the Belize currency, and also, the process of changing our constitution, right? We are seeing that it's all tied in, and making laws to give the state superpowers. tie into the 13th Amendment. My people, what is next? Wake up. Like I just read a passage just now. Don't let it get you sleeping. Wake up. You see how that tie in? Okay, what is next? Please wake up. We also are in and witnessing that we are in a police state. I will not go over and over the atrocities that our law enforcement are involved in and are doing to the civil society, right? We are and also an authoritarian state because we see the action of our leaders, right? Pure authoritarian. You know, I did this and I do that, and so who dare stop me, right? I could pay off phone and call this one and give him this and give him that and buy their way through and who dare to stop them, right? And don't forget, you know, the super majority that you the people gave them, right? You gave them that super, so right now they are power drunk, right? With the authority you just gave them, right? So, like I say, the worst is yet to come. So why, my people, I ask, why is it our constitution being attacked, right? Why? Like again, their intention, right? Our basic rights, they are trying to strip that away. Basic rights of the people, right? We slowly they're chipping away on our basic rights, right? Our freedom, right? Chipping away, stripping it away slowly. Our freedom, right? What happened to democracy, right? Our free and fair and democratic election, do we have that?
Not anymore.
We are all under attack by this PUP government with the help of the so-called opposition. So I ask again, who is there to protect us? Who is there to protect us, the Belizean people, right? And this nation, we don't need a war or, you know, bad things to happen in our country, but what we need is a peaceful, constructive revolution. That's what we need in this country. Peaceful, constructive revolution, right? Because the way this present government is going, right? They have no love for the nation, no love for the people. All the love that they have is for the handful of people that surrounds them. So sad. Is that what the Belizean people elect them to do? But I'm going to stop right here because we have our guests. I saw Miss Pitts. Good night, Miss Pitts.
Good night.
Welcome to to our program, and good night, Greg. Welcome to the program, Greg.
Good night.
Um,
Good night, Miss Fitz. Good night, Greg.
so
Good night.
we
Hi,
want
Mr.
to
Brackett, Mr. Brackett, and Mr. Wade, and listeners.
we, we want to just I always says when we have her, we appreciate because she explained in details of especially this 13th amendment, which is they want to ram down our throat. So I'm glad to have her so she could expand on it and explain to the nation and the world, Belizean, both at home and abroad, what is really going on, how she sees it. Gregory,
Thank you, Mr.
again,
Chairman.
I
Good
know
night
you
to
have.
you, the people at home and abroad. Welcoming you to this our 323rd edition of Belizean Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to sit with you virtually to discuss Belizean affairs. As you rightfully said, Mr. Chairman, about the 13th Amendment. I want to say this to the people at home and abroad. The present government is well aware of our constitutional right and what they are doing. They are well aware of the basic structure of the Constitution. And I can say this because in 2022, Chief Justice Peter Ramada from the CCJ had a conference with the Bar Association in which he discussed the Belizean Constitution and its basic structure. And I just want to go to a tape and play it, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So after the tape, you can go to Ms. Pitts and then to Mr. Brackett and come back to me. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear what the learned judge from the CCJ had to say.
Constitutionalism, if we are willing to look and have the eyes to see. A constitution is like the caoba or campeche trees. We see, turn to, and harvest the fruit of its text most often. But we need to constantly remember and at times recall its roots. There can be no caoba or campeche without roots. Going deep into the earth, roots anchor, support, give life to, enable growth and development, and sustain trees. Roots go into trunks, into branches, into leaves, flowers, fruits, seeds. The roots of a written constitution do likewise. What then are these constitutional roots to which I make mention? Well, the basic structure doctrine attempts to answer this question and also to provide practical guidance on how this basic deep structure impacts governance, legislation, and public authority decision-making and actions. How can we therefore understand this concept? The analogy of a tree and its roots is a useful analogy. It's a good entry point. The text of a constitution itself is like the tree that we see above the ground: trunk, branches, leaves, fruit, flowers, seeds. The basic deep structure of a constitution is comparable to its roots, lying mostly, though not entirely, below the surface of the earth and not always readily apparent. But in fact, the constitutive superstructure out of which what we see and experience as tree emerges and is sustained. And so we can say that without this basic deep structure, these roots, the Constitution as we know it would fall apart. Let's take a few examples to begin to get a feel for this basic deep structure and how it functions. A long line of case law asserts that the separation of powers is part of the basic structure of Belizean constitutionalism. This is no longer disputable. Yet, nowhere in your constitution is there any mention of a separation of powers. Nowhere. It cannot readily be seen, yet it exists. The same applies to the independence of the judiciary and to the rule of law, though in the case of the rule of law, there are preambular clauses, what we can call some visible indicators that mention it. Notice how these three, the separation of powers, the independence of the judiciary, and the rule of law, are integral to the creation and sustainability of a sovereign democratic state as envisaged by the people of Belize and is prescribed in its constitution. These constitutional features are so fundamental that without them, Belizean constitutionalism, as we take for granted often, would cease to exist. If there was no separation of powers, the police maybe could be permitted to sentence criminals. And if the independence of the judiciary did not exist, then ministers of justice could maybe appoint and remove judicial officers on a whim. And if the rule of law was not fundamental, then maybe rule by law could become manifest. And we've been down that road of rule by law through slavery, etc. And so indeed, without these basic deep features, the Belizean state as we know it, even territorially, could conceivably be changed. And the status of Belize as a constitutional democracy could also be changed. Thus, the very notions of sovereignty and supremacy could be altered. Well, how do we make sense of all of this? Of the idea that there are certain principles that are so...
Wow. Thank you, Greg, for highlighting that clip there, and it touches as to some of the things that goes on in this country in terms of the judiciary and in terms of the leaders of this country, the way how they do things, the rule of law. Thank you for but I will go to Ms. Spitz now because she could explain more, because it ties in as to where something is wrong, right? Something is wrong, especially with this 13th Amendment that this government is ramming down the throat of the Belizean people, right? So I go to you, Ms. Spitz.
Good night, thank you. I listened to what the, and I would say legal luminary, presented to attorneys. I was not there, but suffice it to say, and I want to start with this, that notice he mentioned rule of law, and I think we might miss that he distinguished that against rule by law. Now you have in our legal system where we have parliamentary democracy, Westminster style democracy, we have what we call a rule of law with constitutional supremacy. In other countries, and it's based on our legal tradition, which you see throughout the British Commonwealth and other countries who would have been part of the Commonwealth. Even the US, you would see, they would have the law, which was the common law of England, which is the source of law. In distinction to that, you have countries which are ruled by, and instead of saying ruled by law, I would say ruled by decree, where you have dictators, autocrats, tyrants in the so-called civil law jurisdictions, and all the things like your presumption of innocence aren't there. So basically the important thing is that a tyrant, a despot, a leader, somebody who emerges from a coup can pass a decree named by a number or whatever they want to call it, and that would have force, and they would have the powers of the state, the military, backing that up. What I liked about, especially, I was endeared to how the jurists presented it by way of a profound analogy. At the public session last, when was it? Whenever it was, a woman who seemed to have been a political apologist and operative. After people were mentioning history, tradition, heritage, what our forefathers had done, the philosophy or patrimony, she got up and made a comment to the effect that she didn't want to hear anything about any ancestors. Now that is what Creole call ignorant, and that is as well ignorant. She managed to come out ignorant in the Creole sense and the English sense at one and the same time. The problem is, though, that you have people who will listen to that. I want to get to something quickly that you mentioned, Mr. Wade, right? Or maybe I'll come back to it. But when you see what the judge mentioned, the main characteristics, remember I said at that forum that what they were presenting had all the features of a political state, and we should treat it as dead on arrival. The separation of powers, you notice the jurist said that it might not be distinctly mentioned in the Constitution. You have the independence of the judiciary, right? And then you have the preambular section, which mentions in a clause the rule of law. And then, of course, you have the descripts and prescribed sections framing the Constitution, and even the state of Belize, which is described, envisioned. But what you have is what we would say enshrined in the Constitution, right? And the fundamental rights and freedoms. I would have said several occasions over and over before that as a part of our system, Commonwealth, parliamentary, Westminster style, rule of law, democracy, the English Constitution, you will not find it in one book. It is what we call an unwritten constitution, in that you won't find it in one volume, but you will find it in thousands and thousands of volume texts, treatises reflected in statutes and so on. But what you have, which is fundamental and important, sometimes we say as constitutionalists and lawyers and from studenthood, that the British Constitution is stronger for that which is not even written. And you will see that the jurist, I didn't hear him mention, but I've said over and over, you have certain conventions that are entrenched and that came through. Now, the jurist was mentioning the root. So we would say these things are rooted, the source of law. If you trace the root, you would have to go back, I would say, in this so-called modern era. So when people are talking about modernizing law, they don't know what they're talking about, right? Modernization in law for us would be that 1000, but it's antiquated as well, and rightly so. So you all have been mentioning as lay people the basic structure doctrine. You hear it coming from the jurists. So all these attorneys, they well and fully know, and that is why I'm saying I would not want to be in the who is pretending or forgetting or for political or other reasons pretending that they don't understand this or don't even have the time. You, Mr. Attorney, who went to law school, Mr. Attorney, that you don't even take the time to try and explain to the people the 1000-year history of this rule of law. And let me say that he's saying out of it, the three merges. You see how he used that wonderful analogy that even a child could understand. So what they're taking is tricking people and trying to take this axe to our Constitution. You see, when I said last week that it's not a slippery slope, but they are going straight to the edge of the precipice and throwing and get rid of democracy, you might understand it better from how the jurist has said it. And I just allow me, and I will pause here. He's saying it will fall apart. You topple a tree, you cut it down, right? And we know that even in our history, when they were felling trees, there were things like barbecues and people knew how to fell tree and hold. But uno remember, right? Uno know even present day of the tragedy on news when a tree is axed or fell and it drops on somebody and it kills the person. That would be what would be happening to our rule of law. In this case, it's not an extraction of a tree. The metaphor is strong because you're saying the tree continues to grow. It's rooted, even what you don't see, a part of the root. You have some trees which have prop root, like mangrove, right? You have some trees which the roots grow far down into the soil, right? Take our mahogany, it grows up tall, you know it from the canopy, right? And it spreads and it shades of subumbra florio. So in this case, you would say the tree is to be preserved because it's a tree, the democracy. And it goes to the, when you see, get at what he mentioned as the roots and the flowers, the seeds. Some trees broadcast, some you pick the seed and you plant back. But however it is, you nurture, you don't throw away the seed. The plant can give you sustenance, it can give you shade, medicine, everything. So that I think it's a wonderful analogy and showing that your tree is not to be cut. Then quickly, and I'll take just the 1 minute version. Mr. Wade, you mentioned, and I hear you saying, what we need is the peaceful, constructive revolution. And then it comes to mind that when you had people, and I'm not saying you, but we have to watch the danger, because you had certain persons who were saying, and the PUP were espousing the so-called peaceful, constructive revolution. But you had in history what was called the Holy Roman Empire. And history, it went down in the dustpan of history, infamously, because it was said to be neither holy, neither Roman, and not an empire. In the past, I've said that the so-called peaceful revolution of Belize was not peaceful, it was not Belizean, it was not constructive, and it was, if there was any revolution, it was a revolution against the people and our freedom and our history and our heritage. And let me say, that is why, so Mr. Roody Wade, you are well-intentioned, right? But careful, right, when you use those words, because sometimes you fall into the trap that has been set by the treacherous ones. So when I at Swift Hall said, and I characterized it and called it out and went to the jugular against it, that this so-called bill is a revolt by the government against the people and the constitution and the country of Belize. Remember I was saying last week, what is the revolution? Comes from the French word, res nouveau, something new. So you move away, you destroy, you dismantle the old established order. So in this case, PUP put forward and George Price, and with the charm and mesmerism, you know, a snake charmer, when one would want to trick, peaceful, constructive revolution. And in that kind, with that kind of sophistry, but it was not peaceful, it was not constructive, and it was not a revolution. Belize did not need that. What we need is our heritage, our patrimony, our doctrine of public trust, and to hold on to our way of life and our Commonwealth of Belize for the people which we hold in trust, and the doctrine of public trust. There's a, you know, Channel 7 showed me as saying we surrender our individual and collective rights and freedoms. But sometimes when a part is shown, it was in the backdrop of what I was saying, that the doctrine of public trust, for, you notice the jurist mentioned governance, but that's a compact. And when that is breached, You know what happens? It's anarchy because you have betrayed the people trust, and then you do not have that which says that the people ought to follow you. So we have to preserve that. We have to ensure that that is not ambushed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitts. Well, thank you. Well put together and well said, and you know, couldn't have said it better. Comparing what the what the learned judge had said on that tape that Greg played. Leonard, you want to?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My contribution for tonight is the Constitution is a self-preserving document. The way it was structured by those who are our founding fathers, so to speak, I'm pluralizing now, it was designed to do just what it has done so far, which is to keep us safe. It was like a safe harbor to keep our rights protected and to give us the opportunity to transcend time. So that Constitution, as much as our young people today are claiming that, well, it was handed down to us by the British Empire or by the British system, and that we need to do our own constitution now, it's a farce. It's a misguided concept or idea. They're trying to trick the people into believing that we need to dispense with anything that has to do with the British and to eviscerate our present constitution in favor of a constitution that they want to put in place that they will take credit for, as well as the ability and the powers behind that constitution for them to reign roughshod over us. Anyhow, if they want to make changes to the constitution as they are empowered to make, they have to make those changes within the bounds of the constitution. If they make any changes outside the bounds of the constitution or eviscerate the existing constitution, in order to achieve that objective and give it any legitimacy of law or lawfulness, they have to commit sedition against the present constitution and an overthrow of the present constitution and the powers vested in the present constitution. They cannot say they want to make changes to the constitution without committing sedition. They cannot say that they want to get rid of the present system of governance. For example, the separation of powers doctrine dictates that we have to have, as a minimum, 3 branches of government that are equal. Each has its own constitutionally imbued powers. And that is to say, let me just read them out here, okay? We have, for example, the legislative bodies, which consist of the House of Representatives and the Senate and the support staff. 2, we also have the executive, which is the Governor General and Prime Minister and other ministers of cabinet members and support staff and other government department employees. 3, the third one, we have the judiciary, which consists of the magistrate courts at the lowest level, the Supreme Court, or as is now known as the High Court of Belize, and the Belize Appellate Court, as well as the Caribbean Court of Justice. And those 3 elements, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, comprise what we know as this separation of powers doctrine and constitutional leg of the government. Now, it is not for the legislator. Okay, let me say it like this. It is for the legislator to make laws. But those laws must be made, if they are going to make them, and for them to have the validity and lawfulness and legality, they must be made within the bounds of the existing constitution. If they don't make those laws within the bounds of the constitution, Section 2 of our constitution says, this constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of its inconsistency, be void. So if they don't make those laws within the bounds and guidelines of the constitution, they are making then bastardized laws, unconstitutional laws. They are making illegal laws. They are making laws that are null and void. Laws without the legal power and authority to be lawful. They are then acting as scarf law, basically. And that is what the Constitution says that these guys are currently doing. Therefore, those laws are to be deemed as using there, because they love to use phrase, for example, in the legislature and in the administration, that are legal terms, which they don't have any purview over. Those legal terms and definitions are for the court to be able to decide what is legal, what is not legal, what is lawful or not lawful. It is not the purview or the prerogative of the executive or of the legislative to deem what is lawful or not. Whenever they attempt to do that, they're stepping into the area, a forbidden area, a area that they're precluded from tampering with, which is the jurisdiction of the judiciary. And whenever they do that or tamper into that, they're basically committing a crime against the structure of our government, in that they're trying to then eviscerate the rights, the powers, authority vested in the Supreme Court, or High Court, as they now call it, under Section 20 and Section 95. Those powers in those sections there are specifically given to the Supreme Court, not to the legislature and not to the government. Each of them have their own jurisdiction and their own parts of the system that they control, and they're not supposed to tamper with the other parts. But the present government is trying to use the power of the purse, which is to say, they pay the employees of government, they pay the judges, they pay all everybody in the system, and they contract some of these people to come in and work to fill these positions, and they hold these contracts over their head, and as a result, they're then trying to capture the judiciary arm of government. That is intolerable, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leonard. Greg,
Thank
go
you,
ahead,
Mr.
Greg.
Chairman. I want to say this to the people at home and abroad. This 13th Amendment that the present government is bringing, and you hear them speak about this law is an old law, it's been around since 1993. And they're quoting the Constitution as to how they want to get around to do this 13th Amendment. But I want to say this to the public. There are private laws, there are public laws, and there are employees' laws when you work with firm. And even though one might feel like fundamental rights does not cover these laws, they are making a total mistake. Because even though they are private or public, once it violates your fundamental right and you take it to court, the judge has to link it to the Constitution of Belize. And I just don't want to say this and let people hear it coming from my mouth. With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
It is fluid, it is dynamic. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. We have a few questions virtually. You can go ahead, Mrs. Marshall.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. I am interested in, I believe it was a part of the quote from Justice Witt that mentioned the possibility of exploring private law through the view of the Constitution. I'm wondering if you could give us an example of how you see something like that coming into play.
Yes. Okay. So private law. Let's any statute. If you put in statutes as one of the areas of private law, every statute must be read subject to the Constitution. And so, for example, you can have a statute that governs the relationship between employers and employees. When you have to interpret that the methodology of interpretation, that one of the things I said very early on is that part of what this implicates is the methodology of interpretation. And so often what we do in statutory interpretation is we look at within the four corners of a statute and we apply our usual canons, the literal rule, the golden rule, and we say, okay, this means this. Part of what I think is the import of this jurisprudence, which is as yet not been mined in the region, is this. In that process of interpretation, one of the things that has to be done, which Justice Witt is actually saying is very fundamental to be done, is to interpret that legislation, that law, through the lens of the Constitution. Because the Constitution is asserting these values. Later on, Justice Witt has this quote. He says, I quote, as Justice Brackett stated, quote, the world is filled with law. In Guyana, let's say Belize, in Belize, this is no different. But the law must be in tune with the Constitution, which not only imbues the law with meaning, but also commands that it must be complied. So he's saying even the common law, remember the common law is always developing. So even in the development of the common law, judges, because the common law is judge-made, we don't like to accept the idea that judges make law. I know there's some traditionalists who say, oh, judges don't make law, judges interpret the law. Well, I don't know what happens with the common law. I don't know what judges are interpreting, but let's just assume that they're making law for the moment. What he said is that in the development of the common law, these constitutional values are at the center. That's what he's saying. And it follows naturally as long as you assert that the Constitution is supreme and any law that is inconsistent is void. It's how are you going to put that law in a very narrow box? So,
okay. Can we extend beyond, say, the private law to the actions of private citizens? You mentioned an employer, for example.
Well,
so if
because
an employer takes an action against an employee that doesn't, it might be compliant with a statute, but under the lens of a constitution in terms of upholding the rights of labor, it would then be found not necessarily inconsistent or in breach of the Constitution, but certainly it wouldn't hold up under that light.
Yeah, I think that's so. What the obvious problem in that is the Constitution is governing the relationship between the state and citizens.
Right.
So this line between public law and private law is creating the challenge that you're raising.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we can have the direct importation. I don't know if our judges are as yet that courageous or have developed the skills to make that argument. But what can be done is the very statute that governs the legal relationships can be read in the light of the Constitution because of Section 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a direct reading of the Constitution. So human rights principles do not govern private law relationships. We all know that.
Right.
But in reading and interpreting a law, they can have an influence on how we read, interpret, and apply. To read, interpret, and apply the law in a way that most conforms to the constitutional values. And you remember, that is exactly the point always in criminal law of McEwan. That is the cross-dressing case out of Guyana, in which what they're holding is that, these fundamental principles, this law we have to see and test this law to see if it's consistent with them. And if it's not, either we read the law in such a way to make them consistent, that's the modification principle, or if necessary, we strike down the law. Well, I don't see that is limited only to criminal law. I think it applies to any statute, because Section 2 says clearly, and this is a text, any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is void to the extent of the inconsistency. And then the modification clause in the Act that to which the Constitution is an appendix says that laws are to be.
Mr. Chairman?
Wow.
That is to say, what the gentleman is clarifying there for us is that the Constitution itself, as I said earlier, is self-preserving, and it's expansive enough to accommodate a wide variety, a wide variations of thoughts, ideas, management prerogatives, but so long as you stay within the intent of the Constitution, you can basically create all kind of management practices or philosophies or guidance in order to run a country. That's what the gentleman is talking about. That's what the Constitution perceived. The Constitution did not perceive itself when it was put together as the final arbiter of all future possibilities, because they never know anything about no telephone like we have today, where the police officers, they want to take away your phone because they don't want to record the crimes that they are committing under the color of law. So the Constitution could not have adjusted those things in that specificity back then when it was originally created. But it was created with such leeway that even the modern way of living and the way society, the way the society now has advanced, it still accommodates. We don't have to change the basic functions of our Constitution or the basic structure of our Constitution or the separation of powers of our Constitution in order to accommodate any other desired principles or practice in order to govern on behalf of the people and successful governance.
Thank you. Yes.
But these guys are just running roughshod, and they don't understand none of those things, and they're just abusing us.
That is why at the end he was saying the modification clause is stating, and he stipulated it. Right? If you make a law that does not align with Section 2, you must modify it to align with Section 2.
Bottom line.
And I will go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Guys, Ms. Spitz, Leonard, yes, and Greg, I noticed that, we're on this 13th Amendment, right? I noticed that, for some reason, right, it seems like it's all political motivated. Now here you have a PUP government find itself in a lot of hot water constitutionally, right? And they see a lot of things that could happen. So what they're trying to do now, they're trying to ram down this 13th. It's just me thinking that way. Ram down this 13th Amendment, and then they're going to say, anything that happened from 2018 in terms of all these illegal things that had happened, right? Bastardizing the Constitution and the illegal SOEs and they want to cover that up, that you cannot do nothing, come back to the government and say, what you did to me, I didn't like it, so I sue you. So all this 13th Amendment is geared up to do too is to stop people from exercising their constitutional rights, right? And let me finish here real quick. The thing that I have noticed that these people, learned people, I'm not going to call name, are showing them fears on which they know darn well that what they're doing is wrong, right? And they go back, and if you people could go back to when they were in opposition, the things that the very same things that they are saying wrong, that the last government was doing and the things that was happening was very wrong. And these guys showing their face saying these things, right? And they are the very same hypocrites that are saying, you know what, it's not wrong. No, this is what that should happen, right? Because it's needed to curb this and to curb, and they were the same one biting the last government that what the wrongs that they were doing, and they're bringing back the same thing. Sorry about that. That's how I see all that.
Mr. Chairman, to
Go ahead,
get
Greg.
to the best part of our program, as we do here on Belizean Affairs, we show and tell and hold them accountable, not to hear it coming from us, because we have always said it. My cousin had preached it about a supermajority. Let's go to the tape and learn justice.
Best for the rest of this conference and indeed for all of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Jamadar. We will now take questions from persons present. Do we have any questions on the floor? Jose?
Excellent presentation. My question is, and I'm not sure how far you could answer it, but what do you think would be the reaction of the courts to say a supermajority government seeking to amend the Constitution in a way that would conflict with the basic structure principles that you discussed?
Well, I think the three decisions of your own courts that I cited are illustrative. So that I think that the courts, as guardians of Belizean constitutionalism, have a jurisdiction, power, and responsibility to uphold those core values. So if, for example, someone wanted to pass a law that, as in one of the cases, to undermine the independence of the judiciary or to undermine the rule of law, then I think a court can, relying on the basic meat structure doctrine, as I say, as has already been done by your own courts, can say, no, we strike that legislation down, we strike that attempt down. I don't know if that assists in answering your question, but I mean, that would be the sort of natural consequence of what I've tried to share with you today.
I was asking if that legislation was actually an amendment to our Constitution itself.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I don't think it changes it. You know, I mean, I think it can become controversial because suppose you have the entire parliament agreeing to abolish the concept of the independence of the judiciary. The challenge may become political, I suppose. But the point of the doctrine is this: there are certain elements of Belizean constitutionalism that actually shape the identity of what it means to be Belizean as a liberal, democratic Caribbean state. So slavery was pursuant to law, right? It was ruled by law. The Nazi regime was a legitimate regime according to law. Apartheid in South Africa was according to law. Apartheid, not so called, in the southern states of America until the 60s was according to law. What we now assert is the rule of law is not ruled by law. The rule of law has inherent in it, certainly post 1948, World War II, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Part of what is constitutive would be fundamental human rights. And so the dignity of the person. Suppose a government passed a law saying, and this was argued in the States with waterboarding and so, slavery of indigenous people. Suppose the whole government, the whole parliament passes a law saying that it's fine to enslave certain tribes in the northern areas of Belize to work in whatever. You can do that by a requisite majority. What happens when you come to court? Suppose they amend the Constitution to say that, amendments are subject to whatever, 4/5 majority. What happens? I don't know if that, I don't think we can have final answers, but certainly we can have thoughts about it.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman?
I'll go to Ms. Pitts, Leonard. I'll come to you.
Okay,
Ms. Pitts, I'll give you 5 minutes.
I
and
didn't
then
hear all. Sorry, pardon me. I'm trying to not be over exuberant. But what
I'll give
came
you
to
5 minutes.
mind, even before I heard the judge just now, is that we have to remind Belizeans that all saying power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now the Constitution as we know it, the Constitution protects against tyranny of the majority. It protects against tyranny of the plurality of or all of the members in parliament so that they're reined in. And it's interesting because, you see, when I was speaking, I was saying we will not have any lockstep. I think one of the presenters or from government was saying, oh, they wanted to bring this in line with so and so. And it came to my mind, lockstep, Nazi Germany, we will not fall in line. And you notice it wasn't called by name, but segregation was given as an example. And when I was smiling, it was because I had already noted that I would have given an example of apartheid or apartheid in South Africa. When I was at the public, whatever you call it, the other day, I likened the Bantus, the special areas, so-called, that they're proposing to Bantustans, and that are straight out of apartheid South Africa, right? Sometimes they do it, they call it zones in all law. This proposed thing too, you see, they're talking about cordoning off, so that people don't know sometimes when a funeral is gone or when something, or if you have an event in the park, they might cordon off, so they use a nice term. And special area, what is special about it? In our culture, milk cake special, you get that for your birthday. So what's up? Ice cream special, mango special, one nice swim the barrack special, while you rain water special, one trip the key special. You dance with the girl and the boy dance or melodong or whatever, that's special. Wedding special, prom special, baby band special. You pass your exam, you get one prize, that's special. But freedom transgressed on, there's nothing special, that devilish. Now, I wanted to say following too. You see how in the discussion, in the question, and it's interesting that that very question was asked straight to the root of it. Now you see when Mr. Brackett, Mr. Leonard was reading from the section 2, what it says. And then you see that in the law that they're proposing, and remember I said that this is far more dangerous than even the past ones proposed, because they are going to put certain things in the Constitution. That's what they're attempting to do. Now, with respect to the Constitution, you heard what the judge said. I've been saying it over and over. All of us as Belizeans know it. The Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution. The Supreme Court of Judicature Act has in it, prescribed in it, that the court has a duty and responsibility to guard the Constitution. And we know the Constitution is supreme law. Now, when you go to what they're trying to do, this vulgar, wicked, evil intent is to say that, look at this proposed section 18B. You all sketched on it in the sense that they would be trying to come against the intent, clear intent, the states of emergencies and so on, which were declared. So they're saying, and I said that they're saying there would be validity of acts done under proclamations declaring states of emergency or state of emergencies and corresponding regulations in the Schedule 5. So they list all those that went before, and at the subsection 8 of the 18B proposed, they are saying these proclamations and regulations are deemed to be valid and effectual and lawfully done in accordance with Section 18 of this Constitution. Now, they're saying too, hear this, all acts and things done under the specified regulations, proclamations, and 5 are deemed to be valid and effectual and lawfully done in accordance with this Constitution. So then you would say, oh, then repeat themselves. No, they're specific enough to try go direct to Section 18, right? And then they use the umbrella thing. They said this Constitution. So while total tyranny and sweep is attempted, then the subsection C, here it is. It goes on and it has each of the section A, B, and C has a semicolon. So when you do interpretation of law and so on, right? You will understand that when you have a semicolon, sometimes I look at marginal notes, you look at certain devices, you have different rules of interpretation and so on, right? You have simple literal rule, you have golden rule, and you have what we call mischief rule, right? But all in all,
1 minute, Makes sense of time. 1 more minute.
Okay, then good. So you have semicolons, but getting into it now, at the C, they still say that nothing in the paragraph A shall prejudice the right of any person as at 26 May 2025 with respect to any judgment or so on existing, blah, blah, blah. So that would go against what you are saying. They would say, bam, city, we got the senior man. Don't listen to Mr. Wade with the left then the out, right? But you see the inconsistencies. And then I have said at that meeting that they are not conferring anything because we have the well-founded, long-standing, entrenched principle in our jurisprudence, what you call a rule against or a maxim against retroactive imposition of legislation. So a legislation passed can confer a burden, but it cannot impose a benefit. And we can use that widely. I've used that in constitutional law cases. And you will see from what the judge said, all your rights are under the Constitution, you know. And some people might seem to think that the Constitution has a split personality, or you could say private or public. In my view, because all people are subject to the rule of law, even strangers to this land, you call in aid your Constitution. So that I don't think it respects any barrier of public-private law.
You know, thank you, Ms. Spitz.
Go
ahead, Leonard. You have 5 minutes, Leonard. Go ahead. I'll give you 5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
From what the good gentleman was saying, it is obvious that no care how much of a majority the legislator has, He's affirming what I've been saying for years now. That is that even if you have 100% of the legislators, them, all 31 of them get together and make a bastardized law, that law is still bastardized. If they make an illegal law, that law is still illegal. If they make an unconstitutional law, that law is still unconstitutional. It is the purview not of the legislator to determine what is legal or not legal. It is the purview of the Supreme Court and the Appellate Court and the Court of Final Jurisdiction at the Caribbean Court of Justice. They have the authority vested in them as per Section 20 and Section 95 of the Constitution of Belize. That's why the good gentleman said that the matter has to be dealt with and read in the context of the Constitution of Belize. But we have these new judges now that are coming with experience from abroad, working under dictator type scenarios, and are allowing our government to get exculpated by them to continue violating our Belizean constitution. That's untenable. Not only just untenable, but it's criminal. Whenever you're going to have any suborned judges making rules that are contrary to the Constitution and or bypassing the Constitution and or not ruling according to law, basically what they're doing is hamstringing and getting rid of lawfulness. We're not then being governed by the law as the supreme law of the land. We are then being governed by decree or edicts or desires of the government in power. And that is very treacherous. So for us Belizeans, we need to be aware of the fact that not everything that our legislator does is in the interest of Belize and Belizeans. And not everything that the legislator does has to be accepted as being legal, legitimate, lawful, or constitutional. Because like the gentleman pointed out what I read earlier about Section 2, any other law that the legislator makes that is not according to constitutional muster is void. What part of that these guys don't understand or wish to abide by, I don't know. Because I know for sure that they all, when they were in opposition, they all declared the very same things that they are now trying to do as being anti-constitutional, anti-Belizean, and unreasonable and void. But yet now they come to us trying to hoodwink us to let them go ahead and do what they want to do without us having any recourse.
One more minute there, Leonard.
Or any kind of I'll use the term recourse. And that's not right. They are abusing powers that were vested in them and powers that are not vested in them. Because the powers of state that they have is not the ultimate power in the country. The people have reserved powers unto themselves, for which the administrator of the state has to come to the people through a plebiscite to ask the consent and the will of the people. But these jackals aren't doing that anymore. They don't want to comply with that part. What they want to do is to say, well, they were elected by the people, so they get and sit in cabinet and conspire against the interests and well-being of the people, and there's nothing the people could do about it. And if the people are going to take them to court, then they will have the treasury in their back pocket to fight the people, as they did with Mr. Wade and his group, and Mr. Parker Smith and his group, and with Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Enriquez. The government will always have more resources. But if you can muster up the resource to do the appellate court level, then the government don't have much control over the appellate judges. So you're more likely to have your rights vindicated there, but the government don't think that you even have enough money to fight them in the regular Belizean court. That's why they keep chancing us and making these bastardized laws. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Leonard. Greg, you have 5 minutes there, my brother. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say this to the Belizean people at home and abroad. First, I would like to ask the question, is Belize Constitution dynamic?
Yes, it is.
That is correct. And the reason why I am saying this is because the government has all intents and purpose to do constitution reform, and he comes to the people. But now the government wants to do a 13th Amendment. And what is he doing about that? He's going to minority people, as in the National Security Council and other individuals, not the populace, to try and pass this bill. And I want to say this, they are well aware of it, because when this justice, Peter Ramada, in 2022 had this, I will tell you what, the learned senior counsel, Mr. Marshalik, was right there. And he was testing the water to exactly what I am saying, as he did with the redistricting, when he knew it could have been done because they're advanced technology. But not to hear it from me, Mr. Chairman, here it is.
But certainly we can have thoughts about it.
Thank you very much, Justice Yamada.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Marshalik?
Yes, I've always considered what is Belizean a dynamic concept. If so, assuming that for a moment, would the basic structure doctrine also be dynamic, or is it
absolutely? No, absolutely. And I mean, that's the distinction between constitutive and constituted, right? Over time, what the people of Belize may consider to be integral to the identity of what it means to be Belizean could change, right? And I mean, history tells us that, right? I mean, we had monarchies, we had federal regimes, we have democracies. So, yes, I think in theory the answer has to be yes. For now, the question is a little limited in the sense that certainly the Belizean people in this current incarnation, post, let's say, independence, have said that they consider a liberal, sovereign, democratic state as integral, basic to their identity. That has implications, but that could change, right? Sure. Whether a minority can impose it on the people and that is legitimate is what I think is at stake. But to answer your question, it is fluid, it is dynamic. Yes, absolutely.
So there you go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
you know, it's always
on that particular point that the gentleman just spoke to just now, and the question he asked, whether or not it is possible for the minority to impose on the majority, you know, a minority will get together and just decide something and just impose it on the majority. That ought not to be able to happen in a democracy. That's the reason why I call it a democracy. Majority rule.
Amen.
That's why you go to a plebiscite with these type of matters to get the clear sense of the plebiscite.
Yes.
To say yes or no. And that's how you do a consultation with the plebiscite.
Exactly.
By via of what is called referendum.
Thank
It says in our constitution that whenever any of our fundamental rights or any of the separation of powers doctrine issues or any of the
thank you. We only have 2 more minutes here, Leonard. You got your 5 minutes.
You
got your 5 minutes. We only get
just a couple more words. Any of those things require a referendum, and these guys are hell bent in changing our constitution without following the rules of the game. and come
Yes,
to the people with a referendum.
that's
Okay?
true.
And that's the
So
problem
true
that
on
we're
that.
dealing with.
We have 2 more minutes. Ms. Spitz, can you give us a little closing there, Ms. Spitz?
I want to say that
Thank you.
the jury said in theory, and that was a mischief question. And I will say this, and I will say this loud and clear, that be careful you get what you beg for. These people know good what they do. And what they will do, they want to say that the people demanded a referendum. Then they ram it down the throat, you want to drink the blue Kool-Aid, and then when the referendum come, they will pay people and use them public money to pay them to vote because the war of attrition has already happened. How could it be that we could sit here contemplating that it would come to this and urging a referendum? This is like when they had a referendum on the ICJ. I think, at Creme Media, and my friend Emerson Gill was there. And sometimes people, I mean, we have our way as Belizeans. We know how to shoot with selfie at the foot, you know. The devil colloquial, you know, feed him anything, right? Basically, when somebody said, oh, something about referendum with the ICJ, and so I said, well, we have the Referendum Act, you know, and you have certain things, and you have the formula. I said, but men, I say, go up there, go say it, and then stand up or whatever, XYZ, we ain't gonna change it. And so said they change the formula.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you, Ms.
But
Spitz.
in my view, I know they asked them for no referendum. This thing dead on arrival, it's bad, and they should be told that. Because the war of attrition, our people have been subjected to votes being bought and sold for, apathy, and Judas goats who they expect that they will have people lying behind and be the robust ones who get a lot of the vote. They're not presenting that place. Oh, and then they will be in Belmopan, it seems, for the next one.
Thank you.
I believe that any good citizen who goes,
Thank
the
you.
recommendation should be, why not start with Belmopan and declare Belmopan a special area and apply, but we don't even want that, you see, not even in mischief, sarcasm or so on, right? It just nothing happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Spitz. Guys, you know, it's always a pleasure to sit in your company, and, you know, look forward for Friday when Leonard will have his constitutional hour. It's always a thank you, Ms. Spitz. Thank you very much for gracing us here tonight.
And thanks for your patience. Thanks, Belizeans and friends of Belize.
Greg.
And prayers for Belize. Prayers. This should be a special time of prayers. We're in the trenches.
Thank you.